Hey there, everyone. My name is Jenn Walker Wall, and I'm so excited for today's LinkedIn Live. 5 ways to turn up the job search. If you are struggling right now, you're in the right place. We're going to get started in just a moment. I'm waiting for people to arrive and receive that notification so they know that I'm here. And while that's happening, let me further introduce myself in case you're new here. Like I said, my name is Jenn. I'm the founder of Work Wonders Careers, and we help people land new jobs and thrive at work through resume writing, career coaching, strategy, and communities. And so if you're not familiar with our work, you'll probably get a good sense of us today, but you can go ahead and check out our website at workwonderscareers.com. We just moved from WordPress to Squarespace, so it's a fresh site. So even if you have been there before, check it out again. We've got some exciting things planned over there that I'm pretty excited about. Before I was working for myself and working with our small team here at Work Wonders, I was working in HR. I was actually on the other side of the table, watching people apply, watching people interview. And so for the last 7 years, we've really turned that knowledge into this business. And we have shared what's happening behind the scenes with job seekers and professionals so that they can make empowered choices for their career and for their job search. So what you're about to see and hear this week and every other time we hop on here is really informed by so much of that experience that we had on the other side of the table. Not to mention, we have the benefit of watching 7 years worth of job seekers move through this process as well. Oh, I can see some people checking in. Yes. Hi, Alexandra. Hi, Rebecca. Awesome to have you here. I have been doing these LinkedIn lives, haphazardly for the last few months, not terribly consistently. And that's going to change a little bit this summer. So my goal is to basically have these every single week this summer. We've taken a couple weeks off for some vacation and whatnot, but for the most part, I will be here. And not only will I be here, but I'm having some special guests and I'm even organizing some panel discussions so you can hear right from the mouths of our friends and clients some of their best advice and their insight for the job search process. So I'm really excited. So if you're not following me here on LinkedIn, please give me a follow. Make sure you like our Work Wonders Careers page, or even better, make sure you're on our mailing list. You can head over to our website and scroll down on that homepage until you find the email newsletter form, and we'll certainly let you know everything that we have going on here today. So let me see here. How are we doing? Seeing people here. Perfect. So I want to start by saying this is about jumpstarting your job search, but I thought I'd begin a little bit by talking about some of the pitfalls that I think are slowing people down. Some of the places where people are getting a little maybe mired in the details or feeling a little frustrated, or, there's all kinds of things that can happen in this process, right? So I want to share a little bit about where I see people getting stuck. And maybe you can let me know if this is you in the comments or if you have some other pitfall that you're currently in. But one place where I see people get stuck quite a bit is that they're actually applying a lot, maybe too much, all over the place, large volume of resumes going out to different kinds of opportunities, but they're really still not getting traction. So they're playing a numbers game and just hoping that sending those resumes out over and over and over again, day in and day out, is going to move the needle for them. They hate networking, resist networking, aren't networking, or they've networked, like they've already reached out to people in their community and have decided like that's not going to work, or they've maximized it already. And so the job search process starts to feel very isolating, like they're working very independently on their own, making all the decisions for themselves, not seeking input, not asking for help, not asking for encouragement, or seeking the insight of others. Another pitfall I see, so if you're not starting your job search yet, being afraid to start your job search because you have a lot of fear around the uncertainty of the job search process. I mean, there's just so much uncertainty in the job search process, right? You don't know when a job will come through. You don't know if a good job will come through. You really have to take a leap of faith. So much of the job search is just a leap of faith. And so it's hard to kind of start the process and feel confident and carve out time and be diligent and consistent if you're not really sure that there's a good ending out there for you. So if you're here and you haven't started your job search, you're not alone. There's a lot of people who kind of stay in this place of wanting a new job, but not really starting the process right away. So they have to start over, right? So maybe you got to the interview stage and you were feeling really good, but the opportunity didn't come through. That can be really frustrating for people. So maybe you feel like you just need, or you're back to square one, and that feels like a bummer. And maybe you're resistant. You feel like you're not using your time well, or you're just not sure what the outcome's going to be. And then, of course, you could just get really distracted by work and life and everything else that, of course, we're responsible for at the same time that we are supposed to be job searching. So if any of those sound like you, maybe you can just drop a 1 in the comments if any of those resonate at all, even a little bit, because these are all really common. These are usually where people kind of get a little bit hung up or stuck or discouraged. So what I want to kind of normalize today is not just the job search having ups and downs in terms of like our emotions or the results that we're seeing, but also the intensity of our efforts. This idea that the job search is just like consistently going across the board, full speed ahead with no bumps in the road is just not really likely. I think a lot of our clients would like to go full speed ahead, but they have other obligations. They have to take care of themselves. They have to take care of their families. There's a lot of things going on here. And so we need to find a way to balance it all. And so I want to give you permission, in case you haven't given it to yourself yet, that you don't need to go 100 miles an hour for your job search, but you do need to be strategic. And that's really where I want to help you focus a little bit today. So now that we've talked about some of the pitfalls, let's talk about the 5 things that you can do to reinvigorate, turbocharge, and jumpstart your job search process. So the number one thing, actually, I shouldn't say number one thing, the first thing on the list, these are not in any particular order. What you need to do is going to matter tremendously based on sort of where you are. So these aren't in any particular order, and I shouldn't say number one. It's just the first one that I'll go with here is nurturing new and existing relationships. So one of the most common things that I hear is that like, I've already reached out to everyone I know, or I don't know anyone who can help me get a job, or I feel bad or guilty about asking for help, or I don't know how to do that, or I'd really rather not. So I want to acknowledge like how hard it can be to ask for help, and that a lot of times people think we should be doing all of this work on our own, but there's so many ways here to have relationships that are affirming of your job search, even if they can't give you a job, which is like usually not how networking works anyways. So one of the things that you can do here, if you're feeling really stuck and frustrated, is to reconnect with your references, your colleagues, your mentors, your friends who may be helpful. And let me expand on what I mean by helpful. I think it's great if people can hand you a job, but that's not usually how this works. People can help your search by providing encouragement, accountability. They can help your search by helping you reflect on what you're good at. So if there's people that you've worked with, that can be really helpful feedback, right? Maybe you can talk through some potential ideas with them, get their feedback. You can talk to former colleagues, supervisors, mentors, and get some next level feedback as well. And I don't want to really discount the fact that, of course, people can pass your resume on if they happen to be in an organization where you're interested. But that's just not the only way that people can be helpful. They may have insight on a transition that you're considering making or a company that you're considering. So the ask when we're networking, A, doesn't always have to be an ask, and B, doesn't always have to be an ask for a job. Most of the time, it's a request for more information. But I think this is a really great time of year. I mean, I say that every time I give this advice on networking. It's always a great time of year. But to just reach out and say hello, to reach out and say, how are you holding up? This year's had a lot of ups and downs. You've been on my mind, would love to reconnect. You can simply check in and say hello and follow up with people without making an ask, as a way to remind them that you exist, to remind them that you care about the quality of the relationship, and just to kind of maintain the relationship, right? The relationships aren't really relationships if we're always just asking for things, but we can check in on people and say hello and really show up for people, even, without having to make a specific request. And that's not to say there's anything wrong with making a specific request, but if you find yourself constantly reaching out or afraid that you're asking for too much, you can often think of ways that maybe you can be helpful. A few weeks back, I actually posted an infographic on my feed about this. You might be able to find it if you go look at my activity. But, some of the ways that you could do this is like sending a thank you note, writing them a LinkedIn recommendation, and sharing like what great insight they offered or how generous they were with their time. You could ask if there's anything that you could do for them. Maybe they're looking for someone in there, to expand their network in some way. So you could always offer to make some kind of introduction. Because we bring job seekers together as part of our the way we work with job seekers, we see these kinds of exchanges all the time. It's not like people are exchanging evenly, but they're all putting things sort of into the pot, bringing something to the table that they're willing to share, whether it's their extended network or their knowledge or their expertise or just like encouragement. And that's really what we want to kind of encourage more broadly here, is that you're nurturing relationships by showing up for one another, by checking in, by saying hello, by making requests. That's what those kind of encounters and exchanges with your professional network should look like. So here's a challenge for those of you who have maybe resisted or felt like you tapped this out. See if you can make a list with 3 to 10 names and start sending out short messages where you are simply reconnecting, checking in, saying hello. And if there's some kind of specific request that you maybe want to make of some of these people, by all means, go for it. But I also just want to encourage you to just say hello. You can start to see if people are interested in hopping on a Zoom call, or maybe it's, safe to grab something, maybe people are comfortable going inside or having a coffee outside or something like that. Just see if you can sort of get the juices flowing and sort of remind people that you're still job searching, you were thinking of them, wondering how they were doing, and grateful for the last conversation that you had. There's something here that needs to be said that's not, building relationships isn't super glamorous all the time, but it's showing that you are thinking of other people and being willing to kind of take some risks and be vulnerable here yourself. I can see that there's a pretty significant delay here today. So sometimes that happens. Alicia says, I started and then it was a month later. I see lots of people putting out resumes, but no luck finding work since December. My network is too local. So one request you might make if you feel like your network is too local and you're planning a move is to say like, hey, I'm moving to Arizona. Do you know anyone in Arizona? Do you know anyone in this city in Arizona? Or do you know anyone in healthcare in Arizona? And start to kind of reverse engineer your way back. Another thing is that online networking is really great. So I've had a lot of clients when they're moving states or moving countries, they will find, groups online that are in the city where they're going to be moving to. And then they can start to kind of make some inroads there before they've even physically relocated. So thanks for mentioning that, Rebecca. I think that's really helpful for people to hear. So the second piece here, if you are feeling a little stuck, if you're not applying at all, this may not be something you can do, but it may be. So we want to review and or track our data. So a question that I often ask potential clients who tell me that their job search is like just not working is like, how many jobs have you actually applied for? And oftentimes, many people really don't know. They're kind of guessing. And what I've noticed over the years, and I know this was true when I was a job seeker, is that I spend way more time like wanting a new job and like wishing for a new job than actually applying for a new job. And so tracking the data of how many roles we're actually putting ourselves forward for can really help us. It can provide some accountability on some level to hold us to the action we really need to take, right, to get traction here. But it can also help us figure out where the bottleneck is. If you're only applying to like 1 or 2 roles and maybe you get a phone screen or maybe you get an interview or maybe you don't hear back, it's hard to make sense of just, 2 or 3 applications. But if you're applying consistently, right? So if you've been applying since December of 2020, it would be really interesting to like look and see how many jobs have you applied for? How many have you had phone screens for? How many have you had interviews for? How many second round interviews have you had? And you can kind of see by looking broadly at patterns, like where is are you not even getting any phone screens? Because then it seems like the issue is really around resume and fit of the jobs that you're selecting. Are you getting lots of first round interviews, but then lots of second round interviews? Maybe there's a little disconnect happening in the interview here. So really, or have you only applied for like 3 jobs since December of 2020, which is, it's almost 6 months, right? So just trying to give you some examples of the things that I've seen here so you know how this might, maybe playing out for you. If you are not currently tracking, my suggested action step for you is to start tracking these things. If you are tracking, look at this information, sit with it, and try to figure out if there's any pattern here about where the bottleneck might be happening. If you're not ready to apply for roles, so let's say you're someone here who's a little bit more exploratory, or anticipating a job search over the summer, but you're not jumping in quite yet, you should still be writing things down. So if you are doing informational interviewing, if you are doing research on Glassdoor, if you are setting up Google alerts or following companies on LinkedIn, or even just doing journal prompts, like, I want you to really write this down, because the emotions of this process and the process itself, there's a lot of ups and downs. And so when we create sort of some data to ground ourselves in, we can say, like, this is the work I've done, here's what I have to show for it, and here's what it means for my next steps. It can really help us. That is a ton of jobs, Rochelle. Thank you for sharing that. That's a really great. That's a ton of jobs. I don't know, I'm speculating here, but I would be curious if those are all very, very similar kinds of jobs. If you were all really excited, let me see. Since December, it is almost 6 months. That's actually, what is that? That's not. No, that's a lot of applications. You must feel like you're applying to a lot of roles. I would look and see what those 15 interviews, what those positions have in common. What did they look like? What were they asking for? What did the 2 second-round interviews look like? What did they ask for? And if there's a way that you can identify some kind of common theme there and double down on applications in that direction, so maybe they were all in the same industry, or they had the same title, or they were asking for some kind of similar skills, I would totally double down there. Yeah, that is a lot of jobs. I agree. Okay. Step number 3, or option number 3 is really what I should be saying here, is a really good follow-up to Rochelle's comment here, which is to strategically align your resume. Most of our clients get traction from applying cold online via the company website. It is true that people have people in their network who help them, either, usually not by hiring them directly, although that has happened, but more often by connecting them to people who are doing the hiring. So either they are peers in the field, or friends in real life, or they work at the same company, and those people know my clients and can kind of pass their resume on to the right people. So what I want to say about this is that your resume and networking are not mutually exclusive options. They go together. Like, that person is putting you on paper digitally in front of their colleague or friend. And it's really important that you take the time, especially if you're relying on applying cold at a company online, to take the time to use your resume well. Your resume should absolutely not be a collection of everything you've ever done. Like, unless you are, right out of college, this should be a really curated document that is not just about you, but is also about the job at hand, and that is acknowledging the needs of the recruiter and the hiring manager involved. Oh, I love that you all are sharing opportunities with each other in the chat. That is so fantastic to see. I love that. So we want to really think about using your resume more as a highlight reel that highlights the most relevant and salient pieces of your experience for the job at hand. Now, there are a few ways that we do this. One is we make sure the resume is easy to read. A lot of people try to just cram as much content as they can in there, but without white space, without margins, without a good size font, it's hard for people to read your resumes. So that's another piece, is that we're writing resumes for people here. We want them to be easy for people to get to know us quickly and see that we're bringing what we're bringing to the table here, and not just a list of keywords at the top. We create custom summary of qualifications. So if you've been coming to Pep Talks for a while now, then you've probably heard me talk about this. If not, you can go to my LinkedIn profile, where I have some saved LinkedIn lives, and you can hear me talk more about this. But essentially, it's 3 to 5 bullet points we put at the top of your resume: succinct, clear, concise, and speaking about you, but in response to what is actually desired by the people who are doing the hiring. And that is a way to use the top of your resume, which is really great real estate, to summarize how you meet the needs of the job. And this means that people will see your most relevant experience and skills, and not just the totality of your experience or skills, or worse, in my opinion, just a random list of keywords. We also take the time to improve bullet points in the job description so that they're outcome or achievement oriented, and that really helps to demonstrate the impact of your work. And again, we don't need to list every single responsibility there, but we can list the most relevant ones. Hey there, Peter. So we write resumes for people, for human readers, not for robots, not for software. Like, I will do more talking about resumes later this month. And of course, like I said, you can go back to the LinkedIn profile to see what we've posted there. But what I hope you take away from this is knowing that your resume isn't just about you. It's about the job. It's about the hiring stakeholders. And when people say they're applying all over the place and they're applying with a large volume of applications, what often is the problem there is that their resume is so generic. You can't really customize your applications if you are sending out dozens all the time, right? Like, you really need to take your time with this. So what our clients notice is that they apply for fewer jobs with better quality resumes and cover letters, and that helps them stand out. So if your job feels like a numbers game right now, then it doesn't necessarily mean you are fully executing a strategic job search. And that's why I said, look at the jobs where you're actually getting traction and see if there is a way that you can, spend more time applying to those kinds of jobs, or free yourself up from jobs where you're not getting any traction so that you can submit better applications. Now, if you've been following me for any amount of time, I don't believe that there's like a silver bullet to the job search process, especially if you're trying to make a move that feels like a good fit for you, that feels like mission aligned, that you're really excited about, like you're trying to make a move that matters here. We just don't have a lot of silver bullets for that. Time is a critical element. But teaching people how to use their resumes is definitely one of the best tricks we have in the book. Just last month, I sent a resume draft to a client. It was in draft form, and she submitted it and she got an interview. And that's not super uncommon. I wish people wouldn't submit drafts, but it's not my resume, it's their resume. It gives me a little anxiety, especially since I had questions still and comments for them, but they feel good enough using it. And that's another thing too, is I want you to think about how good you feel about your resume, because when people see how aligned they can be on paper, they're very excited to apply for jobs. So your action step here, if this feels like a good place for you to spend some time, is to make sure that you go back to my profile and take a look at some of the lives I've done around resume strategy, because this can be a huge, huge game changer for people. And another thing you may want to do, even though it can feel counterintuitive, is to just take your foot off the pedal in terms of volume of jobs and start thinking about the quality of your applications and the excitement you have for your resume and the jobs at hand. All right. Okay. If anyone has any questions about anything that I'm sharing here, feel free to drop your questions in the chat or the comments here. I have just a couple more steps that I'll be sharing. The fourth one I think here is very important. And if you're tuning in, I just want to say one more time, like, these are not in any particular order. It's kind of a take what you need depending on where you are in the job search process. But there's not a single job seeker who can't benefit from this at some point in the process. And so number 4 is taking a break from your job search. And I know that can be the last thing. I mean, maybe you want to take like a permanent break from the job search process, but most people feel like once they start, they just have to like hang in there no matter what, stay completely singularly focused on the job at hand. And it would be great if our lives would allow for that to happen, but most of the time it doesn't. And so the folks who come to us who are the most burned out, who are the most exhausted, almost the most resistant to even start the process because they've already got so much on their plate and they have no idea where they're going to find this energy to kind of start fresh in this process. We don't start by working on their resume or even talking about what jobs they might want to consider. We start often by helping them put some boundaries around what is draining their energy, which is most often a current job that makes them unhappy. So I had a client who asked me in late January, do you think I would ruin my job search if I took a week off? And I want you to think back to what January was like, because we're sitting here in June and it's almost like January didn't happen. Okay, it was a really rough month for a lot of people. And so I really just want, you to hear the questions she asked me, because I think this is kind of underpinning fears of taking breaks or pausing for lots of job seekers. She was worried about losing steam, like she already had this momentum. She was worried about self-sabotaging, like she'd started things before and then like not pick back up, and was worried she just wouldn't, make the commitment to herself. And most of all, I think she was worried that she would miss a fantastic posting. So I want you to know that, I told her, I think your job search can tolerate a week off. And in fact, your job search might really benefit from a week off. When you come back a week later, like, you will still be able to apply for that job posting, and you will be able to see if you've missed anything. And you can have a plan to return, and you can ask for support and accountability and a check-in around that. There's all kinds of ways we can maintain the commitment to ourselves and stay on course, and also honor our needs for rest. This job search process and working, whether you're working full-time or not right now, something is draining your tank other than the job search process. And so I want you to take care of yourself in this process. And there absolutely is time for that. Another thing that I say quite a bit here into my clients is that you should create a job search process that feels like the job you want to have. So all of the times that we are in our job search process and we are, staying up too late, scrolling for jobs, feeling frustrated that we haven't done enough, not giving ourselves a break, it's almost like we've created our own bad job for ourselves, isn't it? And so what would it be like if you gave yourself a process and started meeting yourself and recognizing what you needed to be successful and setting yourself up to have a job that also gave that to you? A couple comments here, and I'm sorry there's a significant delay today, all. Rahina says, good afternoon, just joining on my lunch break. That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping people join me for lunch this summer. Oh, I'm sorry to hear about your work environment. We'll give you a good place to be for a little bit today on your lunch break. Alexandra says, I have found the most success submitting an application when someone in my network works at the organization. In the past, when I didn't have a referral, the job search felt long. Yeah, listen, if you have someone who can broker your introduction one way or another to people who are doing the hiring, that's great. But there also might be room here for you to really work on your resume strategy so that you don't necessarily need to have people in the organization to get traction there. I actually just finished working with a client, a really, really fantastic professional who had never, ever, ever gotten a job by applying for one. She had always gotten one through her network. And when she found herself looking for work late last year, she was really worried that she wasn't going to be able to do it on her own. And she was able to do it on her own. She actually just started her job yesterday. So it's really nice for people to know how to use their resume. And that way you're not necessarily singularly focused on organizations where you know people. But if you do know people and you do want to work there, please take advantage of that. That's pretty great setup there. So just to wrap up on the take a break, have a vacation, you don't have to job search 24/7 for this to be successful. I want you just to remember, when we want you to approach this work to feel focused and energized and optimistic, and if you are showing up constantly and feeling exhausted and resentful and disengaged, your results are probably going to reflect that. So just keep that in mind if you're having a hard time rationalizing taking a break. I don't think the job search should feel like another full-time job. I think it will probably feel like a hobby you'd like to give up, but it shouldn't feel like another job. So keep this in mind and prioritize rest and self-care and boundaries, and know that that can really lead to some really good results. So I'm going to put in a request for anyone who has any comments or, last call for questions, just because I'm on my 5th tip here. So if anyone has anything they want me to address today, feel free to drop it in the chat. As we are transitioning seasons here, I want you to kind of think about this as an opportunity for a really fresh start. If you know me personally, you know that I'm very obsessed with Mondays. I love first days of the month. I love new seasons. I love the new year. Any opportunity for a natural reset and refresh, I fully embrace and take advantage of, because even though I have a lot of goals and ambitions, I can't be going, full force the whole time. And so I like to really be intentional around these transition points and start fresh, start with a new habit or a new goal or a new way to approach this work. So what I want to encourage you to do, if your habits around actually executing your job search don't feel like they're serving you right now, is to create a new seasonal schedule and really think about how are you going to prioritize your job search this summer. There's a natural little transition happening here. It's kind of unofficially summer. It'll be summer soon. And so one cool thing that you could do is really spend the next few weeks practicing how you might like to show up for your job search this summer. And I just want to offer some favorite tools and tips that we use with our clients here. So if you're having trouble getting started, I want you to think about using something like the Pomodoro method, where you set a timer for a short period of time and work in short blocks with short breaks. And I'm a big fan of the use of timers. So even if you just set a timer for 20 minutes and say one clear task that you're going to give yourself, that's a really great way to get started. And if you could do this 3 times a week, what would your job search look like a month from now? It would probably look different if you're not making that kind of time commitment right at this moment. If you think you know what kind of roles you want and you are kind of like on the edge of whether or not you should be starting the job search, why don't you practice applying for 1 to 2 positions a week and see what kind of time commitment that takes up, and try to figure out what you can commit to, especially if you're working full time or taking care of family over the summer. What I find, and I know some of you are joining me from the Ladies Get Paid webinar last night, so I know that we talked about this, is what I find is, like, as you're starting the job search process, the resumes can take a little bit more time up front, but as you're getting used to being strategic and curating and creating templates for yourself, this will move much more quickly. So if you did 1 to 2 positions a week for 2 to 3 or 4 weeks, you would be moving at a much more consistent pace. So don't be discouraged if the applications feel cumbersome at first. They can move much more quickly once you get a little bit of practice. If you're starting from scratch, like if you're here and you're like, I know I need a new job, I look at jobs, but I'm not ready to start the process, I'm unhappy, or I need to make a big change, set aside some time to do some reflection work, self-reflection. You can go to our blog. We have tons of blog posts with helpful reflection prompts that you can use there. And maybe it looks like before you start work, next week you are drinking your coffee and spend 20 minutes doing some journaling and responding to those prompts. Creating some structure for yourself is hugely helpful. And that's where I'm going with a lot of these suggestions, is trying to give you a way to start fresh and focused so that you can use the time you have well, rather than trying to have an infinite amount of time and energy and enthusiasm for the job search process, which is a very high bar to set here. If you're overwhelmed, ask someone for help or practice saying no to other obligations. So if you're so overwhelmed and burned out that it took a lot for you to even show up today, then practice carving out this time, Wednesday, 1 o'clock. I'm going to try and show up all month long and try to learn what I can about what my job search needs, right? Try to leave work at 5 or 6 or decide to stop checking email. I think this is a really great place to start for people who are busy. Stop checking email all night long. And if that feels like too much, if you're like, Jen, I absolutely can't do that, pick one night where you can do that. If you're looking for encouragement or accountability, maybe there's a friend or a peer that you can reach out to and have some co-working time with, or you can have check-ins at the end of the week. Have some accountability and encouragement and social time for yourself here. I think that can really help as well. I know people like our co-working times, and our community members often find their own co-working time with other folks in the group. So I know that this can be a good way to kind of get things done, and you'll have someone to encourage you and check in on you. All right, I think we have a couple of questions I see here. So let me just finish up this piece. I want to just point out that I don't think that, having a schedule and taking a break are like opposites of one another. I think your schedule should also include like non-job search related time, like fill up that tank, see people you want to see, especially after, 15 months of definitely not seeing the people you want to see. Get outside, go to the beach, take that vacation, and just have a plan for yourself and practice. I'm using that word on purpose. Practice meeting that commitment of returning to your job search for yourself. I think when people learn to honor commitments they make to themselves, that's such a game changer. It builds confidence. It makes you feel better about the decisions you're making. And you just learn to trust yourself, which is huge, really critical to the job search piece. Okay, so let's take some questions here. All right. I'm hoping to get into an industry that I have not worked in before. I feel a little lost writing my cover letters and resume to each description. So this is a good question, Rebecca. So a couple of things that I would consider is to make sure that you're doing some prep work before you try to just start customizing resume and cover letters first, because it's actually really hard to just go into the customization part. So what our clients do is they do the research, they review the job postings, they unpack their own experience, they really do some writing around relevant experience that highlights what kind of skills their ideal employers are looking for. And that's where the compelling content comes from. If you're looking for like more hands-on tips, we do have a job search ready bundle available for purchase on our website that includes a summary of qualifications resume webinar, as well as a cover letter workshop. So I think that's still available for sale over on our website. So you can go down on the homepage, it says store. It's like the only thing we have available right now. We're working on more digital products. So if you're looking for like templates and webinars and resources, that's where we have that available for purchase. But I will just say you can also use the website and look at the prompts that we have there, do that reflection, look at the jobs you're applying for, give yourself resume templates that are really well aligned for the different kinds of roles that you're considering, and practice. This should feel a little bit easier as time goes on. Does optimizing LinkedIn mean you should put all of your tasks and responsibilities? I don't think it does. I want you to think about what you want LinkedIn to do for you. Are you hoping to be found? Are you doing a lot of outbound networking and just using your profile as kind of like a personal landing page? Like, what is your LinkedIn goal? If your goal is to be found, which is usually, I think, how people describe optimizing LinkedIn, then you want to think about what you want to be found for and include relevant content, relevant language. A place where I see people that could make some improvements pretty consistently is that professional headline. So if it's your current job title, for example, but you aren't going to be looking for that as your next job, think about what you could put there that's going to be more helpful for you, that people could be searching for. So sometimes we have people put, they might have a title, but they'll put project management, leadership, customer success. They'll take pieces of their current job that are going to be more relevant in their next role and that people may be searching for. All right, let me take a quick sip of water. How do you tackle? So I see a couple of interesting things here. How do you tackle a resume when you have no idea how to recognize your own skills and strengths? I really struggle with this. I don't think you're alone. I look at my resume, which I did not write, and think to myself constantly, is this enough? This is not enough. Can I really do and deliver on everything that is written here? I feel it's almost like I chronically feel underskilled and underaccomplished. It's very hard to look for a better job when starting from a place like this. Yes, and you're not alone in feeling this way. So there's a couple of things I want to say. I think you sound like someone who would really benefit from writing their own resume, or at least doing the prep work. So the prep work that I just suggested that Rebecca spent some time doing, you should do. But instead of just looking at external jobs, I want you to really think about what your work has enabled others to do. When we're undervalued in the office or at our workplace, we can often take that to mean that we do not bring value to the workplace, which is not true. Just because people are not treated well does not mean that you don't bring and enhance other people's or organizations' ability to get work done. So when you hire someone else to write your resume, which I do, I am someone people hire to do that, right? Like, you don't have the benefit of really going through your own work experience and taking ownership over it. Now, our services are very hands-on. Like, we spend 1 to 2 hours with our clients capturing their voice, but not all resume writers do this. So I have a lot of clients who come to me after like filling out a form online and then having a resume writer do it, and then they're not happy with it because there probably just wasn't enough of an exchange or processing of your own experience for that to be well represented. So I want you to think about what you're most proud of. That's a prompt that I like to use quite a bit. And think about what your work has enabled and what the target opportunities that you're pursuing would find most compelling about your experience. And then maybe go through those bullet points and make sure that they feel like they represent your skill with integrity. I like to use that word because I'm not worried about people like over promising, but if it doesn't feel like you're able to step into that kind of responsibility that's represented on your resume, if you don't feel like you can do that, if you don't feel excited about doing it, maybe there's some different language that you can use there. But I actually think that just spending more time thinking about your experience could be more helpful, writing about it and making sure that that's integrated. It could just be that you're like really disconnected from your resume because you may have had some help getting it written there. I am an experienced job seeker wanting a specialized position. You mentioned something at the resume top to cue employers into specifically what I want. Is that a statement I add? Great question, Mike. So what I was referring to at the top of your resume is the summary of qualifications. So you can go back and look in my LinkedIn profile. I've done some videos on this. So when we write people's resumes or when we're coaching our clients through this process, they create a summary of qualifications, 3 to 5 bullet points. And it's interesting. I want to make sure I use the right language here because you said, is this to cue employers into specifically what I want? It is, but it should not read like that, right? Like what we're saying in the summary of qualifications is not about what we want. It is about what the recruiter and the hiring manager are looking for to fill the role. And if we're going from a generalist role to something more specialized, then yes, that will help frame and position your most relevant skill sets. But I want to make sure that you're not, or you broadly, are using that space to speak to the qualifications of the role and not just your desire to have the role. It's very different. And I want to make sure that you are taking the time to look at the needs of the hiring stakeholders, look at the language, look at the skills and experience that they're asking for, and then for you to distill your relevant experience there. And you can use the cover letter a little bit to expand on your interests and explain the transition here. I think that would make perfectly good sense here. All right, so let me just share a couple of things that we have coming up. First of all, thank you all for being here. Thank you for your very good questions and for even helping each other out and giving good advice in the chat. I love to see that. Next week, Wednesday at 1, I will be talking about 10 job search hacks for productivity and efficiency. I way prefer efficiency to productivity. I prefer efficiency to pretty much everything else in my life. So please come if you are looking to figure out how to best spend your time. I know we talked about that a little bit today, but that's like all we'll be talking about next week. Later this month, I will also be hosting another one of these chats on resume mistakes that I see job seekers make. And the following week, I'll be doing how to build a professional network you actually feel good about. So we love some feel good networking here. And all of these events and more are on our Work Wonders site. So if you haven't been, please visit us, workwonderscareers.com. We have a blog with over 70 blog posts there that can probably be helpful to you no matter where you are in your process, as well as events listing throughout the rest of the month. And we have way more coming in July. Also, while you're on our site, please do join our mailing list. You can join right from the homepage. If you scroll down, you'll see we send out a newsletter off the clock. And in addition to tips, advice, and resources that we create in our upcoming events, I also include my favorite reads for professionals from across the internet. So make sure you join us. And thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Rebecca. Thanks for sharing. And hopefully I will see you all next week. Thanks so much.